we'll wait a couple of more minutes to give our editor a chance to show up. If you're not here for the MEDIAMAN working group, well, it's okay to sleep in the back. It's not that crowded. Yeah. Now you're here. So we are instructed to make sure that everyone joins the room so that we get an appropriately sized room for the next meeting. I'm kind of afraid that we'll be meeting in a broom closet next. Yeah, AJ and travel budgets don't seem to match much.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Oh, am I booming? That's correct.
Yeah. There's a speaker right next to. That's not good. Okay, we'll just shout louder. I could. If my wires will follow me. So this is the MEDIAMAN working group meeting in Montreal and hoping that we'll make progress. Now, we do have the note well, and apparently instructions have gone out that we should stare at this for at least 1 minute, because it's a new version of the note well, which puts everything inside one slide, an improvement from the 2 slides from previous ones. But it's all there, including all the links. Behave like a decent human being and make sure that you know what IPR rules are, because if you don't, then they'll bite you. And the IETF has procedures, and you're supposed to follow them. And everything you say in the meeting will be recorded, may make the notes, and will come back to haunt you. Yeah. So that's 1 minute. You can stop now. Meeting tips. By this time, I suppose you have all used the Meet Echo thing. I mean, the important thing is join the queue first and then go walk to the mic. And do check in. Resources. Standard slide too. Now it's for the non-standard part. And I had basically put 3 points on the slide. One is 6838 bis, which Mark will lead. One is the charter item called review as checklist. And we should take a look at our charter to see whether we can declare ourselves finished or what is needed to declare ourselves finished. So that's the items on the agenda. But first we have the standard pause. We need a scribe. Do we have a volunteer for scribe? Alexei has volunteered. Let the notes show that Alexei had volunteered, and Alexei is responsible for writing that into the notes. Thank you. Okay, working group status. Brief slide. We did the working group last call on 6838 bis following a couple of months of no traffic. And the result was negative in the sense that we couldn't detect consensus that the document was ready, but positive in the terms that we got a number of issues that got surfaced and a few people actually read the document. So the goal of this meeting is to settle those issues that require discussion, and so that our editor can make the changes needed and hopefully send it to the ISG well before next IETF. That's editors, plural. So the next goal is to finish the work of this working group, ensure that all our charter items are on track for finishing. I think we have one that is outstanding. Actually, we have two, but one of them is consider whether we need to change stuff, and there, no is a perfectly reasonable answer and a short one. Before going into Mark's list of issues, two issues of IANA-trans that are related to IANA-trans. Readily available document is not an easily definable term. IANA-trans has some info on it, and I think it's adequate for us to say that okay, 8126 bis is our definition of readily available. I mean, there's also a question of guidance of contact information. Again, draft Barber has some text in it, but says that details need to be in the registry specification, which is what we're writing. And again, we might want to say no more, no further consideration needed, or something else. Any comments on those two issues? I see Pete in queue.
At a very tall mic. This is Pete Resnick, with no hats on. I'm comfortable leaving these strictly as pointers to draft paper, but that will create a dependency. If everybody's good with that, rock and roll. I think that's probably the most appropriate thing to do, because that group is really working out how all registries work. And if we end up saying something that is even vaguely not consonant with what they're doing, we're just going to get ourselves in trouble. So we might as well leave it to them to solve the problem.
Seems to make sense to me too. Other comments? Mark?
Just the comment that I find it a little disappointing that they have that details need to go in the registry specification approach, but maybe we should take that to IANABIS, that
Yes.
the more they can take on and make consistent across the specs or the different registries, I think the better things would be for people who use the registries.
Yeah, I mean, if they were to formulate it as if there are further considerations, the registry might.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. That would be perfectly fine for us. We don't want to add more complexity. Andy?
Yeah, is this an informative or normative reference? Okay, so this is a normative reference? Okay.
Yes. So it might stick the document in misref for a year, but
Right, that's
someone
what's
else's
going to
problem.
happen.
I mean, yeah, so this would just be us updating our reference to 8126 to 8126 bis, basically. That's a good question.
What was the question?
Is it definitely going to be adopted by IANABIS?
My reading of the Anabis meeting was yes, but
I would be shocked.
Shocked, I say.
okay, we have our the not the decision of the working group, but the sense of the room. And with that, I'll leave it to Mark. And I should give you permission to share.
I would suggest sitting at the table then.
Yep.
You don't want to.
It's the coffee that makes a difference.
I don't want to have to take a photo with the coffee involved.
If I'm dropping one, it's not the coffee. I'll put it that way. Okay. I'm not present in so many ways.
I can't give you permission to share screen.
It might, well, yeah, okay, I'll share screen, sure. Oh, wait, can I share screen with this tool? I have to get the full tool, don't I? Yeah, that is really distracting. An update has been. Okay. Oh, shit. Stop. I don't want to do that. I want to do screen share. I requested. Try request screen share. You should have request. Cool. Yep.
I apologize. It took me a minute to figure that out.
Oh, it's all good.
By the time, every time it asked, it disappeared from the screen as I clicked around. Go ahead.
Oh, now I need to actually create a, hold on. Sorry. This is really confusing. Okay. Where's the, I have too many. That one. I want to share that one.
I think to see it on your computer, you have to go to profile.
Screen share. Let's try this again. Try it. Sorry. Yes. Good. Share window. There's the window. Lovely. Okay. Sorry about that. You can see it in glorious 320p. Let's go from the bottom. Issue 81, registration rules for namespaces. And Harold asked quite some time ago, on my birthday, what should be the use of namespaces? For example, Microsoft Dash or vnd.goog. In type names. Should namespaces be registered? And my instinctive response to that is, isn't that something that IANA kind of does in the vendor space for us? Right. But they enforce that you create a vendor tag and then you own the space under that, I would assume, right?
I was trying to find the spec for that and couldn't.
Have we asked them what they do? Like, can I go along and register something under Microsoft? Because if so, excuse me. Alexi's thinking.
No, I'm not thinking. It's just deep sigh. It's like,
Let it
okay.
out.
To be honest, I don't dare to actually do a review of what's done. But as far as I know, I don't think people have abused it in the past. Not, I think we just got lucky, basically.
So you're saying that they could have used it if they wanted to?
Yes. Would IANA catch it and tell experts? I mean, we should ask them. But so yeah, if we want to officially hook to an existing registry of, what's a vendor or whatever, yes, we can do it. But no, this has not historically been done for this registry.
So should I just write, we may need to create a registry, but we should check with IANA to see what they think?
Or we can just use existing registry, but we never asked for this specific one. So yeah, we probably should talk to them to see how much of an overhead it's going to be for them. Do they think it's,
I actually have another draft with a similar kind of structure, so this would be instructive to see how they would like this to be handled. I'd rather see what their preference is rather than trying to invent some complicated scheme and then foist that upon them.
I know at least 2 registries that are for vendor names.
Okay, so let's check with them.
And yeah, one of them is for OIDs.
Okay.
But
ooh, that's a nice label. I like that label. Oh, sure.
Yes, please. I can barely see from. I'm a person in denial without glasses. I cannot read this. But never mind.
Okay, so we'll check with the IANA and possibly create something new here or follow their. I apparently already pressed comment there. Okay, good. All right. Next issue. Acknowledgements is purely editorial. We did one round of acknowledgements to make sure we capture the people who contributed to the previous documents, but we also need to capture who has participated in this process. I guess we can use meeting blue sheets and mailing list traffic and GitHub traffic to do that. But if you have contributed to this process, it would be helpful if you noted that on this acknowledgements issue. But that's not the only thing we'll do. Community format change controller. This was the big one, I think. The standards tree says that the owner of a media type registered in the standards tree is assumed to be the standards related organization itself. If you will recall, we have one of the big things we did in this draft was to add the option of not having a standards tree a registration coming from a SDO, but instead from a what we call a community format, something that the DEs recognize based upon a number of criteria is suitable for registration in the standards tree, because it's in some ways this is replacing the grandfathering kind of concept we had before, if you squint at it just right. And so, of course, a community format doesn't really have an SDO, and parenthetically, neither does a grandfathered format necessarily. So the question here is who's the appropriate owner for the media type? And in previous discussion, the two kind of ideas that came out were that either it makes sense to make it whoever that community is, assuming that you can identify that community. Some, including myself, expressed discomfort with that because these communities are often not well identified or governed in a way where you can confidently say that is the authority for that community who can speak for the as the owner of this format. And therefore, maybe a good default for this would be indeed the IETF itself. We used to say IESG here, but I think based upon another issue, the actual owner is the IETF in total. And so the last comment here, let's see, Harold says on October the 2nd, which is not that long ago, Section 5.5 says that the same procedure that would be appropriate for the original registration request is used to process a change request. I think that's adequate for ensuring that there's public review. 4441 doesn't mention considerations for defaulting the change controller yet. I think that would be a good idea to make. Okay. Q.
Am I audible? Do you hear me, Harold? Hello?
Yeah, it's very indistinct.
Is that better? I'll try and shout. So in the previous specifications where it says IESG is the change controller, what happens to that?
So there was another issue where Ayana pointed out that the preference and the precedent here is not to identify the IESG as a change controller, but the IETF as a whole. Now, operationally, that means the IESG will be handling the change control, but the actual entity is the whole IETF.
Mark, that does not clarify what happens in the previous specifications where it already says IESG is the change controller. Do we need to mention something like in specifications which previously pointed to IESG, IETF will become the change controller?
So yeah, that's the cleanup of the existing data, which I think is separate from our considerations here in the specification. That's an activity for IANA in conjunction with the experts. Okay. So we've had now months to ruminate upon this. I'm sure that people have thought about nothing else in the intervening time. Has our thinking changed?
My perception is that nobody's come up with anything better than saying IETF. And I mean, contact for further information can be whatever's appropriate in the community. But the IETF as change controller will take care of it.
I think practically what this is going to mean is that the IETF is the official change controller, but if there's a need for a change, then practically the IETF will need to coordinate with the community or the portion of the community that is working on this spec. I also like the slight friction that introduces, because it creates a slight disincentive to use the community process that and I think that's actually a good thing, if you know what I mean. So I'm going to record discussed in Montreal. sense of the room was to use IETF as default change controller for community process registrations, or not even default, just as the change controller for community process registrations. Yeah? Thumbs up? Okay. Next issue. 2119, need to restore some. You had this issue, and I think we incorporated some PRs, if I remember. I've incorporated most of these. I think you had one or two. And I think, are we ready to close this? Or do we need to consider this? I think we can take this offline, and I can look at that, and we can adjust if necessary. Yeah, the number 59. Yeah. Do we need to define readily available? This is kind of what we just discussed, I think, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you. Syntax in 2.3, issue number 64. Harold said section 2.3 says the final plus in a subtype name introduces a structured syntax specifier suffix. 4.2 says that the structured syntax suffix is defined as all the characters to the right of the leftmost plus sign and cannot contain any more plus signs. Together, these rules outlaw more than one plus sign, but in the seeming conflict looks strange. My response when I read this was that I think it's structured the way it is because we have to acknowledge that some people are going to be using media types that aren't registered, and they might have multiple plus signs, despite our fervent wishes otherwise. And therefore, we need the parsing rules to be robust to that. That was my initial reaction. Pete. I think so.
So to repeat what Alexi said, but I think in the correct order, that we're saying that only the leftmost plus is the one that counts, and everything else is
No, rightmost.
the rightmost. So you start from the right. And I'm fine with that, but I think we should probably make it clear in the text that this is for robust parsing purposes, but this is not a legitimate name. Right? Well, it's not a registerable name, and I mean, it's going to be treated as a name in and of itself, one whole name, but the fact is that it does not follow the syntax of what should be registerable.
So
And Alexei is saying the ABNF does not specifically disallow it. We could update the ABNF, but yeah.
okay, so I'm putting, we need this difference for robust parsing, but we need to clarify that it's not registerable, and we may need to update the ABNF.
And that seems like a good conclusion.
I tend to agree. Is that okay? Okay. Moving on. Always be closing. Where were we? Number 66, IANA approval for designation of the producer's name is not specified. If there's an existing process for registration of producers' names with the IANA, we should point to it. If there's not, we should either create it or say the designated expert will review whether. Is this the same as the creation of the vendor tree? The what we talked about before.
Same class of issue, but I have to look at the spec to see.
I think it is. Oh, come on.
It's the same issue.
It is the same issue? Okay. Okay. What issue was that?
Registration use namespace 81.
81. Lovely. Very.
Both opened by me. I have no idea.
It's okay. Where were we? Number 70, effect of provisional registration is not specified. In section 521, we specify registration procedures for provisional registrations, but don't specify the effect of registering that. Suggesting in addition, like the designated expert will check submissions for registration of names in the provisional registration list to verify that it has been adequately coordinated with the person or body referenced in the contact information of the provisional registration. Well, so that's just a check to make sure that it's sane, or owned properly. I think what I interpret this issue is we need to define the semantics of what provisional is.
So what I tried to express was that when you come to register something permanently, the designated expert will look into the provisional registry and see that it matches there. I formulated it badly, so it looked like provisional to provisional. I mean, if, say, IETF registers something provisionally, and then ITU comes along and registers the same name permanently, then the designated expert should say, go away until you and the IETF agree who owns the name.
So there's an interesting intersection here with provisional registration and the early registration, I think, procedure, which is specified in another RFC, which escapes me right now.
I thought that
It's effectively a form of early registration.
I thought the provisional registration was early registration.
Is it? No, I don't think it is.
I don't want to.
I don't know that we need that, but we have a lot of provisional registrations, don't we? Because people use provisional registration as basically lower bar registration, don't they? Yeah. Even though we also have different trees for different bars. So what are we doing?
We go to the bar.
So this is Pete again. My understanding is that if you have a provisional registry, there's less need for this early registration procedure. Early registration is, we need the registration now. It's going to be permanent, right? We're going to put this in the registry, but we need IANA to reserve the number now before publication of the document. And IANA has an early allocation, early registration procedure for that. But that's different than provisional, which is we're going to publish this document, or we've got this spec on the outside, or we've got people who just say, this is what we do. We want to provisionally register it. And maybe it will become permanent down the line, and maybe it won't. But it's different in kind than the early allocation, which is just IANA holding something in abeyance until the document finally gets out the door.
Would the world still be here if we just upgraded all the provisional registrations to permanent and got rid of provisional registration?
I'm going to go sit down now.
I tend to agree that we don't need two similarly looking processes for this. So I would go the other way. I would just make all provisional early allocations, because then they actually expire.
Oh, that's
Which
dangerous.
But it will make IANA send emails to people saying, do you still want it?
I think to some people that's going to feel like rug pulling.
John.
At the risk of reprising
long discussions in email core. Depending on what you did, the problem here is it's not clear from what it is you're trying to accomplish, and I think the last few comments of the microphone clarify that it's not clear what you're trying to accomplish. If what you're trying to accomplish is to provide people who don't want to supply all the information right then, the way to get a name registered to avoid name conflicts, then you may want to look at the two-track model in 5321 BIS, which says, okay, if you want to just reserve the name, you can reserve the name and provide contact information and as much more as you want to. And if you then want to make that permanent rather than that kind of more permanent or more community review, then you need to go off and do something else, like getting community approval or not. But it seems to me that we're dancing around the problem which caused that particular solution with provisional or temporary or maybe not or early, and that may or may not, for the reasons that you just come up, be your needs. The idea of expiring a registration so that somebody else can come and squat on that name seems to me like an invitation to trouble.
Yes. John, I agree with you, and I think looking at the motivations for this is an excellent way to proceed. I feel like we're experiencing, several layers over history that have been accreted in attempts to solve this problem, and now we have a complexity problem as well as a undefined semantics problem.
Indeed, and this points out another potential issue with some of the ways in which we've been going, which is the delegating some of these decisions about strategy as distinct from decisions about individual registrations to designated experts may not be a good idea, because if the problems are strategic, then maybe the community needs to hear about them. But where we're in complete agreement about that is that you've inherited a mess and it's time to clean it up.
As the younger person in this room, as the younger person in this room, isn't this provisional and permanent distinction of some historic nature, which has been defined in multiple previous RFCs of this?
It definitely means something in certain registries.
Brent Zundell. My mental model is that there are two things. There's provisional and there's permanent, and there's an occasional emergency action to jump into permanent early. And I don't think making the emergency action the default instead of a provisional would be a good way to go. Feels like a lot of overhead for something that should be just kind of an easy, hey, this is something we're thinking of doing. We'd like to provisionally do this. There's an established process for it, and in time move that to the permanent process, which has the greater oversight and the designated expert full review and all of that. So that's the way it makes sense to me.
So I've got the this is the provisional registry on the screen. There are not that many entries, considering how many media types there are overall. And I guess maybe the last updated column here is perhaps quite interesting. It's been used a fair amount recently. I'd be interested to see if these recent entries are people who are using them as early allocations effectively. And if so, then we can kind of segment those off and say, okay, let's figure out how to make the early allocation process good for that use, or direct them that way. Maybe they didn't know about that and they just used provisional because it was there. And then we can look at these older ones and say, well, what's up with them? Alexi.
My suggestion from listening to this is, so like my understanding of early allocation is that we don't define what's early allocation is here. IANA has a RFC on this, and it means that they have a length of time they're valid, and then they need to be confirmed every, I think it's a year or 2 years. So when people registered for provisional, they didn't expect them to ever expire. So I think we shouldn't be changing rules on people. I think that's.
Oh, no, I'm not. Yeah, I
So-
agree. We don't pull the rug. Yes.
I think I wouldn't like just to make them permanent. I think that would be wrong because some of them wouldn't qualify in the current rules. So my suggestion instead is to ban early allocations for this registry. Can we do this? Then we only have one mechanism, so it's less confusing.
I agree that having one mechanism would be good here, and I tend to agree that it probably should be early allocation. What I'm wondering is some of these, I think, can be converted to early allocations with some coordination with the authors to make it clear what's happening and get their buy-in. And the older ones, I would look at them and say, you know, are they appropriate for the community format process, perhaps?
Alexei said, get rid of early out, just say no early allocations allowed for this registry.
Oh, you just want to make provisional and
Just keep provisional because they don't expire. The current process kind of works. I mean, it's not ideal, but
so then that gets, I think, back to the earlier question. What does
That-
provision?
yeah.
What is the semantic difference between provisional and permanent? If their provisional is also permanent.
it's a name reservation, as John was talking about. I think this is a name reservation thing for things which are still in flux and not quite finished, not necessarily. People might not be ready to register them properly. That's kind of my feeling about how it came to be.
Right, but that's kind of, you know, that may be apparent in the implementation behind the interface, but it's not apparent in the interface. It's you know.
So basically, my understanding is we can try to convert them to permanent, but for some of them it will fail because they cannot satisfy the requirements for permanent. And so we shouldn't convert them, which I think is by design. Or we need to engage with the authors of registrations to make sure that either they make an effort to upgrade them because we cannot do it on the spot.
I mean, we could just consider them grandfathered.
Consider them what?
Grandfathered. Grandpersoned.
And Rahul is on the queue.
Do you hear me now? Okay. So the discussion in Bangkok, you really need some early allocation provision because you do not want other SDOs out jumping something IETF is creating. So for that, you needed the early allocation procedure. I don't think that mixes well with the provisional here. So just keep that in mind in whatever you decide.
So, Pete here. Provisional does, as Alexei said, fill the gap of early. That is, you can register with minimal information, get it into provisional. So there's no need to have a separate early and provisional. You can do one or the other. You accomplish the task. What we're saying about this registry by having provisional and not allowing early allocation is provisional is so you can get early, but you're not going to have any reminders. We're going to assume that someday you're going to try and promote it to permanent. And if you don't, leaving something old in the provisional is basically saying that has been allocated for the rest of time and it's not going to be reused. So there's no confusion between your old unpermanented thing and something new. So basically what we're doing is we're saying things that get left in provisional forever effectively deprecate that allocation. And if someone wants to upgrade it, that's fine, to permanent. Otherwise, it's just tombstoned.
So I want to push back on this because what it's effectively doing is making this registry a special flower. IANA has a way of doing this that it uses with other registries. There's a whole RFC about doing it that way. It'd be really nice if people didn't have to relearn a whole new interface for every registry they use.
But understand that provisional is also used in other places in email world. This is not unique. We do have this in other places.
Email world has this in other places.
Yes, but yeah, right.
Ooh, protocol fight.
So I don't think that this is so far out of bounds. We could say we want to be more like what now IANA does mostly, which is the early allocation, and they send reminders and blah, 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 blah. But we do have this legacy. I think I'm ambivalent about the choice we make, honestly. But I'm just simply saying, either one of these solves the problem. The only problem with moving from provisional to early allocation is we're going to have to do something about existing ones that are old, because we don't want to turn them into early allocation and try to get IANA to start notifying these people and expire them at some point. That's just silly.
So watching the time, we only have 1 hour, and I've closed the queue on this one. We clearly have two possible decisions: allow early and close the registry on provisional, or keep provisional and disallow early. I think that's too much. That's too new for people to decide here. I think we need to take this to the list. By the way, a tradition has been that if we stop using a registry, we close it, keep the existing entries. They don't go away.
Did you kick me off?
And when I locked the queue, somehow I got there. I mean, Bron has the last word on this one.
I was just responding to the specific thing that came up of you could come along later. You put something in provisional registry, it sits there unreminded forever, and you could come along later. Who's you? Is you the person who proposed it? Is you the if that person can't be contacted, if that person has died,
one of us, yes.
Who is you? We don't have a clear indicator. Is it another person from the same? Yeah, it is the change controller, but the change controller needs to be replaceable by the IETF at some point anyway, if they have expired out for whatever reason. So when it comes down to it, the IETF owns the namespace and can allocate it again to a new author, presumably. So I don't see how that's different, really. You either contact them and say, are you still squatting on this, or someone else can come along and say, I'm taking over change control on this.
So I'll record in the issue kind of the state of the discussion, and I'll volunteer to go off and maybe try and bucket the current provisional registrations to see how we could deal with them if we wanted to close it. That might inform the discussion a bit more, if that makes sense.
I don't find the share allow screen share.
Okay.
AJ apparently found it early.
Okay. So can I share? Oh, yes, I want to share.
You click on the person in the queue, and then a little pop up with a green check mark or a red X comes. So you have to click on their little face, Harold, but that's not important anymore.
Okay. So we're on to issue number 71, guidance on contact information and possibly other fields. We've had discussions on what should be the contact information field. We discussed this, didn't we? Yes, we did. Number 76, IESG and change controllers. So IANA, oh yeah. Section 5.5 says the ISG makes the final decision regarding updates to change controllers, suggests that even if the current change controller does approve its own replacement, IANA would have to ask the ISG to approve. Can this be changed to something like, in this case, the ISG, blah, blah, blah. And so I suggested we delete a sentence. That change can be seen here, apparently. Yes. So because it already said they may recommend to the ISG that the change controller be updated, this sentence seemed redundant. So the suggestion is just to remove it. Is that okay with everyone?
It's a bit implied that ISG is power though.
Yeah. But it's not always the case. It's the change controller, if they approves their own change, then they have the power.
Yeah.
That's appropriate. Think about it, and okay. I'll wait a while before closing the issue, but if you want to think about it and comment on the issue.
I think it's fine.
Okay, so we can close that issue. I'm sensing a theme. All right, let's close this issue then. Great.
If you don't have enough sleep, you're not clear enough,
So number 78, provisional media types URL. If you want to add the URL, should the provision only be... So I think this is probably, let's keep this open until we figure out what we're doing with provisional, if that makes sense. Number 80, early allocation. IANA gave us long feedback on early allocation, so perhaps we'll keep this open as well. Yeah. Number 82, who appoints designated experts? Art area director or even IESG. This seems almost editorial. I think let's just call it ISG. Does anyone object to ISG? Exactly. Yep.
So the ISG will probably delegate it to a specific area.
And it's certainly not clear anymore which the right area is. So, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Number 83, who checks for semantical, I'm not sure that's a word, alignment of media types. Yeah. Section 4.2, media types that make use of a structured syntax or similar separator such as a dash should be semantically aligned from a data model perspective with existing subtype names in the media type registry. The use of passive voice makes it unclear whose responsibility it is to check for this. Yeah, this is intentional. Before we had language, I see the nodding. We had language that required the designated expert to check for this, and it was felt that that was too draconian, and that it creates both unnecessary work for and difficult work for the designated expert, and raises the bar too high. So this is a little intentional. Perhaps it shouldn't be an RFC 2119 keyword, so that we don't have that kind of angst about who actually enforces it. Any thoughts?
Well,
I think there's a cue from the movement in the back of the room.
we have
Yeah.
5 minutes left in the session. Yeah.
We're almost done with
the Rahul, speak up quick.
Just go and then I'll come to the previous one, which I missed.
Okay.
I would hesitate to get rid of the normative language entirely because this was already a softening of the previous must and the designate. It's like I agree that it's somewhat ambiguous, but it should be if it's not evident to the designated expert, oh yes, these things are well aligned, or they can't find someone who says yes, these things are well aligned, then it's probably not well aligned. It's like it was left ambiguous to allow the designated expert to have a wide range of options for making the determination.
Well said.
And so I think it needs to be kept.
2 मिनट चाहिए मुझे.
Yeah, I think the point that I got from the comment on that is that it's more whose responsibility is to look for things that might be aligned, and so are we asking IANA, please tell the designated expert if there are things that seem to be aligned? I think that's the point. That maybe we're asking IANA to say, do like hey, these are things that seem to have similar things. Ask the designated expert if that's true or not. Not have the designated expert have to search the namespace.
I'm not sure I got. Can you? Sorry, Rahul, can you mute? Thank you. I'm not quite sure I got that. Maybe Alexa can.
Okay. Disclosing secret of a lazy designated expert. At the moment, I'm not going to check for this. I want IANA to tell me that there are similar looking names in the registry that I should check.
Okay. That makes sense, as long as IANA is okay with doing that, but they do things like that.
Yes, and
currently.
if they are not okay, then I think I would rather learn about this early and
Sure.
then and this also links to potentially to the checklist thing.
Yeah.
If IANA is not doing it, then it has to be a part of designated expert checklist. Go and look for all the names that start with this prefix type thing.
So I had a slightly different emphasis, which was we want the designated expert to be able to point to this in the RFC when they want to reject a registration and say, no, it's not semantically aligned. But we don't want to create a requirement for the designated expert to do busy work or to always enforce that, because it is a judgment call. Yeah. Okay. So let's try and capture that. Okay. Although, so what exactly are we asking IANA to do?
You're asking IANA to make what they will consider a substantive technical decision. And my impression is they have gotten extremely resistant to that.
That's what I was wondering.
No, it's not. Somebody is asking for register application/A plus JSON. IANA can tell me if there is application/A plus anything.
So just when the request comes through to the DE, IANA supplies, by the way, there's a.
Yes.
Right. And
That's all.
And it's up to you as DE to do whatever you want with that information.
Yes.
I'm okay with that as long as it's spelled out very exactly in the document rather than being hand-waving, which can be the grounds for either IANA objections or appeals of decision registry things.
Does this capture where we're at? Discussed in Montreal, we want IANA to tell the DE what potential clash there is without judgment and give the DE the flexibility to use that information without requiring them to act in a certain way.
Yes, I would say any potential clashes.
I mean, it's a admin search job. Yeah. They don't need to do like expert review or whatever. They just search.
Okay. Okay. We have quickly. We have
Yeah,
one more issue.
I was going to phrase it as something like IANA should provide any context they think is relevant. The designated expert must check that this is a good registration.
No, that's not where we want to go.
No?
No. There's a lot of water under that bridge. We're almost out of time, so we can take that up. One more issue real quick. Ability for change control to pass responsibility to another entity was lost. I think we can probably process this offline, or do we need to talk about it?
So So basically, yes. Discussing another ticket, I think Harold suggested new text for this section, and the paragraph saying that change controller can reassign change control to another entity was lost. I don't think this was ever discussed. And my case is the current text seems to imply that only ISG can reassign, in which case it's like, do you really want, if Pete has a registration and want to give it to me, why does ISG need to be involved?
Sure.
It's too heavyweight, basically. So restore the text.
Yeah, okay. But to be clear, a change controller can ask IANA to change control, and the ISG does not get involved in that process, right? Yes. Okay.
And given that we're now over time, I just wanted to mention back on the 20th, just before I left for Dublin, I promised that I would get some issues in from some mail that John and I had been exchanging, and I failed miserably. Mark now has the list of topics we're going to discuss. There's about 9 items, about half of them are purely editorial. Mark and I will discuss the rest and try to write them up in issue form and get them into the tracker. But I wanted to let people know that though I dropped the ball, it's not completely on the floor yet.
If you can drop the screen share, I can go back to the slides just in case we have just in case people don't run out. Sorry, cancel. That's not very well. Share slides. So reviewers checklists. This is charter milestone in May 2026. Deliver any recommendations about future registration and queue management? And I think we could answer that with no. And publish a reviewer's checklist about security considerations in media type applications, either as an RFC or wiki page. Alexei and I had a brief discussion about this yesterday. Suggestion is to take what's on the IANA registration form as instructions to registrars about what to write in security consideration seconds. Add the section that lists the musts in 6838 bis and say that the will check this. Add a section and host the text somewhere as a living document, IANA website or GitHub or whatever, and let the DEs maintain it. Alexei has promised to try to deliver the first version of this. Does this sound like a plan that makes sense to the working group?
I'm trying to remember whether this was our discussion or something else. Did we have a discussion about who needs to approve the changes to this?
Yes, we discussed that, and that's not on the slide because I'm not sure about that.
Okay, I think we were discussing that it would be good if like somebody like area director or maybe their delegate approves this, just to make sure that designated expert don't go completely off piste with. Yeah. So but yeah, we can discuss this again once there is actually an example of how it looks like.
Yeah. So let's let the notes show that who approves changes to this document is not decided yet. So I didn't make a slide for the charter, which is good, since we're over time. Okay, action items. Mark will work on the issues. Pete will also work on the issues, and Alexei will write the draft instructions for DE. And we might want to, since we don't seem to get much traffic outside of immediately before meetings, we might want to have an interim meeting in January or something. if you want. I want you there.
January in Australia is like August in France. No one's going to be around. Well, I'll be in Shenzhen, so.
So that makes it unlikely that we close before Shenzhen. Okay, see you there.
I don't really need an intro. I think we're going to be okay.
If we can get people to actually comment on issues and not come up with new issues,
I know. Stop doing that.
Sorry.
then we can get done before Shenzhen.